Hey guys, it's Lewis from Recycle Bicycle Sales here. In today's video, we're going to be talking about how to replace the saddle on your bicycle in 5 minutes. So, what is the saddle and why would you need to replace it? Well, the saddle is this part here. That's the part that you're sitting on for the entire bike ride. Most of your body weight is sitting on this saddle. If you've got an uncomfortable saddle and it doesn't suit your body, that could mean that you might need to replace it to help you fall in love with cycling a little bit more. We actually did a video recently talking about how to measure for the right saddle as well. So you might want to go and have a look at that video if you're thinking of buying a new saddle. And once you've got your new saddle, this is how to replace it. So what do you actually need? Well, you only really need a set of Allen keys. And the funny part is you'll probably only need one Allen key anyway, whether it's a 4mm, a 5, or maybe even a 6mm Allen key. But you should only need a set of Allen keys. If you want to do it perfectly, a spirit level can help as well. So when we're actually replacing the saddle, I recommend trying to find a flat section of ground. We don't want to be doing this up in the work stand or halfway up the stairs at home or anything like that. We want to find a flat ground so that we can work out what the sort of saddle angle is in relation to the floor. Now that we're ready to start taking the saddle off, we'll notice that there's actually two main types of sort of saddle clamp, I suppose. There's some that clamp downwards and there's some that clamp across. We need to work out which type we have. That way we know how we're actually going to be undoing it. So if we look down here, we can see that there's actually two bolts that come from underneath and they're what sort of pull that clamp downwards. And then this one here has two bolts on the side that are going to pull it in towards the saddle. I would quickly say that the reason that you might have one or the other, these ones here will suit carbon rails better. Like they'll pretty much fit pretty well any saddle that you can buy off of the shelf. Whereas this one here, there's a couple of different types. Some are suited for metal saddle rails and some of them are suited for carbon fiber saddle rails. We'll actually find that there's a slight difference between a carbon fiber saddle rail and an aluminium or metal or chromoly or any type of metal saddle rail. They're a slightly different shape of the actual railing. Now we're ready to actually remove these saddles. Now I'm quickly gonna say, I've replaced thousands of saddles in my time working at bike shops, and it's one of those things that's just the most fiddly little job. So classic Murphy's Law, if you say it's gonna take 10 seconds, it's gonna take 10 minutes. And if you say it's gonna take 10 minutes, it's gonna take 10 seconds. So this is gonna take us 10 minutes, but we're gonna try and do it in 5. Removing the saddle is the easiest part of this job here. We just firstly have to find out what size tool that we're gonna need. In this example, it's a 5mm Allen key. I'm literally just gonna put it in there and I'm just gonna loosen it. But we wanna loosen the bolt really far, but we don't necessarily have to completely undo it. We just wanna be able to undo it really far. And then that way, the saddle should hopefully just be able to sort of slip straight off. This is one of those pull from the side ones. These side to side ones are really quite easy. They're probably easier to take off than these sort of clamp down from the top ones. So let's go have a look at that one now too. So now for doing these clamp down from the top ones, it's a little bit different. We've got 2 bolts on this one rather than one that we had on the other sort of pull from the side ones. We usually have a bolt at the front and then a bolt at the back. I find that the rear one tends to be a little bit easier to reach, but once we've started to loosen that rear one, I mean, I can see that the Allen key is spinning quite easily. Now I want to go across to the front one as well and see if I can loosen that one a little bit too. We just want to loosen it quite a bit so that we've got a bit of leeway to be able to then slip the saddle out. Taking the saddle off can actually be quite a fiddly job. The reason that it tends to be fiddly, especially on these sort of clamp down types, is that there's 2 different pieces here. There's a plate on the top and a plate on the bottom. The plate on the bottom is not connected to anything, so it can slip out and fall on the floor and then there's nothing to clamp it onto. Once the saddle rails are both completely loosened but not fully undone, the best way that I've found to take the saddle out is to try and pull it a little bit to one side. I'm pulling it a bit towards this side, and I just want to move that base plate out of the way and then sort of hook that saddle rail over the top, and then I can slide the whole thing out to one side there. Congratulations, you've taken the saddle off, you've done the easy part, you've done the demolition part. Now it's time to put the new saddle back on. It's the exact same task we've just done, but completely mirrored, adding lots more struggle. So I just want to get one of the saddle rails. I don't need to do both, just focusing on one for now. And I just want to rest it on that base plate. I might need to lift the top plate up a little bit so I can get in underneath there, but I just want to get one side on, and then I'm going to pull the saddle to the side and try and get it over the top of the top plate and then rest it back on the base plate there. I know that that took me 5 seconds there. If it doesn't take you 5 seconds, it's okay. Sometimes this is quite a fiddly job. It might take you a couple of different attempts to get it on there. You are doing it right. It's just a little bit of a fiddly task. Now that we're ready to start tightening this saddle, I choose to start by tightening this front bolt here. And I literally just keep tightening it until the nose of the saddle looks like it's relatively flat Something that I've learned over the years is if I pull down a little bit on the back of the saddle, that means that as I tighten this front bolt, I can see the nose of the saddle coming down. An average sort of rule of thumb that most cyclists tend to follow is they want the top of their saddle to be parallel with the floor. That's why we've got our spirit level that we'll have a look at in a minute. But I sort of just pulling a little bit of weight on the back here while I tighten it up, and then I'm looking with my eye to be able to see if it's getting pretty close to flat, and I reckon that's pretty damn close. And now we can tighten everything into place by tightening up this back bolt here. Literally all that I'm doing here, by the way, is balancing the front bolt and the back bolt. If I tighten the back bolt, it's going to lift the front up. If I tighten the front bolt, it's going to lift the back up. We're just sort of balancing so that we can try and get them relatively central. If you want it to be perfect, you can grab your spirit level and you can rest that on the saddle. And I'm just looking at the little bubble in there, and I can keep balancing the front and the back until the bubble's right in the center. And that way I know that it's perfectly parallel with the floor. Once you're happy with the position and you're ready to confirm everything that you've done, now we want to make sure that these bolts are nice and tight, front and back. We want to sort of balance them a little bit. I do like half a turn the back, half a turn the front, half a turn the back, half a turn the front, just so that we're not going a little bit biased towards one. And that way we're going to pull everything in place. So now we're ready to put our new saddle back onto this side clamp here. Now it's worth noting here that none of our settings have changed in this video. By that, I mean, we're putting the exact same saddle on. If you're perhaps going from an aluminium rail saddle across to a carbon fiber rail saddle, you might need to change these two pieces on the side called the ears. So if we look at the rails of the saddle straight on like that, we can see that on these metal types here, that they're like perfectly circular. They kind of look like, let's see if I can draw this. They kind of look like a perfect circle, just like this. Whereas when we look at these fancy, expensive, lightweight carbon fiber ones, they're actually a little bit oval shaped. So the shape of the saddle rails, are a little bit more oval shaped like that. They're pretty good circles, happy with that. So the reason that I say this is because the saddle ears that we have here might need to change shape a little bit. When we were removing the saddle, I was saying you just want to loosen the bolt. You don't have to take it all the way off. To be able to show you what I mean when I keep talking about these saddle ears, I am going to take them all the way off though. The saddle ears are these two glossy black pieces here. They could be any different color on your bike. Again, make sure you've got the correct saddle ears. If you walk into your local bike shop and say, I need saddle ears, I need carbon saddle ears for my, for my Ridley Noah, they'd say, sure, we've got you. Now we're all ready to start putting the saddle right back on. Cool, let's chuck it back on. I'm just gonna rest one side in, and then I'm gonna push the saddle ears across to the other side and then squeeze it back down. And I can see it's sitting on that base plate. So now all that I have to do is just tighten it back up. And then we can have a look at the angle of the saddle as well before we really do tighten it. So we just have to use a bit of brute force to adjust the saddle to wherever that we think that it needs to go. On this one, I'm not gonna bother changing the setting too much, but if we did, it's just with a bit of aggression, we're just gonna punch up and punch down and just adjust the saddle wherever it needs to be. Now I can already tell there's gonna be somebody in the comment section telling me that I should be using a torque wrench. Yes, we should always be using a torque wrench. I think with saddle rails, however, we want it to just simply be tight because they can cause a lot of noise. If you've got carbon rail saddles, yes, a torque wrench will be a good idea. Long and short, if you don't have a torque wrench, pretty tight, but just remember that you've got to be able to undo it one day. So don't like use your foot or anything like that. Now, even if you've replaced your saddle perfectly, chances are some of the settings might have changed a little bit. Maybe the nose is up a little bit and it's not very comfortable for you, or maybe it's sort of nose down a little bit and you're finding yourself slipping off the front of the saddle. Chances are it's in a slightly different spot than it was before. So I recommend carrying whatever tool that you were using to undo these bolts. I'd carry it with you on your first bike ride at least, so that if you need to change it at the traffic lights, you can. Quick little disclaimer, I would carry that same tool with you on your first bike ride with the new saddle. Thanks for watching, everybody. I hope you now know how to replace the saddle on your bike, whether it's the sort of clamp down from the top or the clamp down from the side. It's actually a bit of an easy job. It's just really fiddly. So chances are you are doing it correctly. You're just bumping something while you're trying to tighten it. So keep doing it, you're doing it right. Otherwise, I'm gonna say thanks for watching and we'll see you guys in the next video. See you guys.